Hello, everybody. Welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door. And I was just walking the dogs, collecting my thoughts, ready to do my England versus Scotland preview. And I thought, I know someone who knows way more about Scotland than me. So please welcome to the preview from behind enemy lines and the Tartan Daily as well during the Euros. My friend and yours, Stuart Hodge, who apparently has many uses here. Welcome, Stu.
Hello, mate. I am, and just to give people an update, if anyone's seen me on Behind Enemy Lines before, I am in a travel lodge in Borehamwood, suffering from heat stroke.
Partridge.
Partridge. Unbelievable, mate. Like, the sun's gone away, and I'm still suffering from heat stroke. There's work going on outside, and yeah, like I'm running out of clothes. Everything's just going wrong.
Have you got your 13-inch plate though?
I've got my 13-inch plate, and I'll tell you something I did on the Tartan Daily today. The last night that I had on, I didn't agree with one of her opinions, so I showed her the red card, which was in fact good product placement here, a Thai food tea bag.
Oh, don't. I was just going to go into Bangkok Chick Boys and the Corby trouser press, but we won't get there because we got to talk about the biggest game in, well, the Euros, frankly, for any England fan or any Scotland fan as soon as it was drawn. England versus Scotland on Friday night. Complete transparency, recording about 2:00 on Thursday. So we are one day removed, but I think we understand the narratives of everything now, and we're just waiting for a leaky dressing room to give us some ideas on the teams at some point. So where we are, Stu, is England won the first game against Croatia. Scotland lost against
the... by the way.
Yeah, we'll talk about both. Don't worry. Scotland lost to the Czechs. So we're at a point now where, and it's England with 3 points, Scotland with 0, but still with this four third place teams qualifying. 3 points will see at least one team qualify, I think. So it's not quite yet an all or nothing game for the Scots, but it feels very, very big, doesn't it?
It's massive. It's the game of the tournament. It's the game. I mean, when you think of Euro 96, albeit Pizza Hut adverts and the current manager's sort of worst moment in his career notwithstanding, still people remember Gazza's goal, remember Scotland versus England. Gary McAllister scores that penalty, Scotland probably win the game. It's probably a totally different memory. But it's that break and then Gazza's amazing finish and the celebration, of course, which is iconic that people remember. This is going to be the game that, unless England go on and make a real splash in the tournament, is going to be the game that everyone remembers. So from that perspective, it's absolutely massive. Scotland went into the Czech Republic game, and I think most people considered that the game that we could go on and we could win and maybe give ourselves a chance of making the knockout stages, given the format, as you discussed, with 4 of the 6 third-place teams going through. But Scotland being Scotland, of course, we just totally negated that. And we're going into this game, and I've been quoted on the Tartan Daily as saying, as long as England don't win it, if we beat you in this game, regardless of whether we go through, the Euros is a success. Because this is, for Scotland, this is the game. And I mean, I can't remember. I mean, don't get me wrong. My desire for the game and how much I'm looking forward to it has been dampened a bit by the nature of that defeat against the Czechs. But I mean, it's ramping back up. It's building back up. And by tomorrow, I'm sure I'm going to be,
It's going to be great. We can talk about the different mentalities because you won't get this, I guess, as an England fan. Tomorrow will just be rampant negativity I'll be reading all day. So, at least you can look forward with a bit of optimism. Can I give you my view as an outsider of the Czech Republic game, and then you can fire back and let me know?
Yes, but can I also give you my view on the England propaganda machine a wee bit? So you see rampant negativity. What I would see tomorrow is entitledness from a nation that has delusions of grandeur, having not won a major trophy since 1966 when you won it on home soil. So that's my kind of thing. And I think a lot of Scotland fans get really annoyed at the England fans and the media for this sense of entitlement that England seem to have, albeit the golden generation and some wonderful players never delivered. And my argument would be actually Gareth Southgate has done the best job of any England manager I can remember, because he's looking at things in a kind of holistic sort of viewpoint, and he's got you playing, and he seems to not care. Like, I mean, all the furore over Kieran Trippier's selection, he didn't care, and he was vindicated by the end of the game, I thought. So, yeah, I think that entitledness and the arrogance that you see from England fans, that's the way that we are perceiving it, and that is why, oh my goodness, we want to do a number on you. But yeah, you were mentioning about the Czech.
No, I'm just fascinated in the philosophy of it all, because sort of being entrenched in the England mindset of it all, I don't think you would get one England fan who truly would confidently believe that they're going to win any kind of major final. It's all very self-deprecating is how we see it from the inside. But of course,
that's madness.
I know. Literally, you know, and I guess it's international football a little bit, because, and I think it's a very different beast than club football, where people are just obsessed with who's not playing, because there's no recruitment, because there's not 38 or 46 games. Everyone thinks
Adams feels a bit like a new signing, I will say.
Yeah, everyone seems to think that the way to improve or change anything is, oh, it's this player who's not playing or who's not kicked the ball. That is the solution to any problem. But no, it's fascinating. And hopefully, although this won't be the case, and the stupid thing is, all the negativity prior to the Croatia game, sorry, we've gone a bit off piste here, was around Tyrone Mings, Calvin Phillips and Raheem Sterling, who all played really well. But unfortunately, people get entrenched in their positions and almost waiting for these people to fail in the games. Anyway.
Calvin Phillips, by the way, in particular, was outstanding.
Yeah, but Stu, you've commentated on the Championship. I've watched the Championship. This was no surprise.
It was not news to those of us.
There's no surprise. And what I was really pleased about was that I'd had a conversation on YouTube the previous day where someone had said to me, Calvin Phillips, you can't play him in a double pivot, blah, 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 more of this negativity. And I didn't say anything back. I just asked the question, you don't think he's intelligent enough to adapt to moving forward? And then he really was, wasn't he? Anyway, let me give you my take on the Czech Republic-Scotland game, which I watched. I didn't think Scotland were that bad. I think they created loads of chances. I think the midfield three were put in as a three to disrupt. I thought Robertson, who's clearly the best player, kind of stepped up to the
when Tierney's not there.
Okay, when Tierney's not there. Okay, but
that's important though. That's an important qualification.
But he stepped up to, you know, I'm the player in this team that's won the Champions League and the league. And he kind of stepped up and took the responsibility of being the best player. And how many days are you going to come up against Patrick Schick, who was just too incredible? The header's amazing as well, the way he guides it into the corner as well. And look, just, you know, we don't need to talk about the second goal. This is an outrageous bit of skill. But I often say this kind of throwaway. If you play that game 10 times, how many times does the Czech Republic, how many times does Patrick Schick perfectly glance that header in, and then, you know, David Marshall slightly in the wrong place at the wrong time and gets utterly punished by a brilliant piece of skill? I thought a few things went against the Scots, and it wasn't the worst performance I've ever seen when you see what the kind of Turks have put up, and we haven't got that bigger bar for it at the moment. But what's your reaction to my sort of thoughts on it?
I think it's a measured assessment. I think Patrick Schick, now, what people forget about him is he's the first Czech player to be top scorer in two different countries. He is a generational talent. The problem with him is he's a bit hot and cold. He was hot against Scotland, wasn't he? Yeah, he was hot against Scotland, but he was hot-tempered, for example, in the recent friendly with Wales and get sent off, you know. So there's positive and negatives to his game, but he's an absolute talent and a really, really good player, and a good couple of rungs better than any striker Scotland have got, to be honest, in terms of a natural striker. I think what you're saying about the midfield, I agree with in one sense. I think they had a bit of the kind of application side was there, but the big problem for me with the midfield is they were getting bypassed at every turn, and the problem that caused that was a byproduct of the fact that Kieran Tierney wasn't playing. Kieran Tierney gives Scotland the ability to step out of defence and knit the defence and midfield together, and then the midfield and attack are knitted together, and it allows us to play through the phases and actually play our football, because Scotland at the moment, when we're playing well, play an attractive brand of football. We did create lots of chances against the Czechs, but most of that was from a sort of slightly more agricultural style of play. And I think, I've said on my podcast, the big problem with Scotland in that game was the work we did in both boxes. I think defensively, and it was a second phase from a set piece, we knew coming into it, I think it was 7 out of the 12, I'm not sure if the numbers are right on that, but something like that for the goals, more than half in the qualification campaign for the Czechs were by virtue of set pieces. It was a second phase from a set piece where Schick got in between Cooper and Hanley.
Not only was it that, it was the second phase of the second set play that they hadn't got the second phase in the last couple of minutes at the end of that half, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was pressure. And I said at this point, we need to get to half-time here. And, of course, being Scotland, we didn't. But, yeah, I knew that was going to be the danger coming in. I think the big blame for that set piece, even though you get in between Hanley and Cooper, was Stephen O'Donnell, because Andy Robertson was in the box defending, so the full-back switched. It was O'Donnell's job to press. O'Donnell didn't do that quick enough. O'Donnell was a weak link in that game, and I felt Jack Hendry as well, who hit the ridiculous decision to shoot from 40 yards out, which led to the ball breaking and then Patrick Schick's majestic second goal. I think the right side of defence going into the game was the area where I thought Scotland would be weak, and so it proved, because it was a Jack Hendry error coupled with a David Marshall sort of mistake being too far out. Although it was his job to kind of play the Manuel Neuer role and sweep up any loose balls. And as you say, how many times does Patrick Schick do that out of 100? Not many. So that's one factor. But I think on the right-hand side of the defence in particular, Stephen O'Donnell was a weak link and looked a bit overawed by the occasion.
He did, he looked a little bit like he wasn't you could tell within 5 minutes. I think I said, calm down. You know, everything was a bit fraught. And you could tell when you look at someone like John McGinn, who's obviously a better player, but has played more. You could kind of tell the difference, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely could. And in the midfield area in particular, which was what I was coming to say, we were bypassing that area of the pitch and we were hoofing the ball a lot towards Lyndon Dykes, because essentially we didn't have that Kieran Tierney player to come and step out and play. And Liam Cooper's a good defender, but he's not as good at stepping out and putting the play together, even though he plays in a Bielsa team where that kind of thing is readily encouraged.
But it's short. It's always short passes. It's always into Phillips or out to the left back, isn't it? It's not, Rio Ferdinand, is it? Yeah,
no, that's true. And he didn't have that offer. That was the big point. And the big problem in Scotland's midfield for me was Scott McTominay. Scott McTominay is one of the stars of the Scotland team. I mean, that is an automatic thing you would attribute to him by virtue of the fact he plays for Manchester United. When Darren Fletcher played, albeit in poorer Scotland teams, as the Man United player, I was a brilliant player. And had it not been for his sort of bowel problems and all the stuff he had going on there, would probably have had an even more glittering career than he did do. But Darren Fletcher, when he played with Scotland, even as a teenager and sort of in his early 20s, he looked like the Man United player in the Scotland team. Scott McTominay did not look like that against the Czechs, and there's been too many games where he's not. Now, he's a different style of player for Darren Fletcher, of course, but what he's got to do is he's got to impose himself on the game by virtue of the fact he's the Man United player in the Scotland team, and the game passed him by.
And Stu, that's something we very much saw from Aaron Ramsey and Gareth Bale from the Welsh yesterday. They behaved like the Juventus and Real Madrid players, didn't they?
Yeah, Robbie Savage said it in commentary, who I'm not a big fan of, but I actually thought he nailed his commentary for that second, for the first goal, sorry. And I think that was what happened. Wales in the first game, their big players let them down, but they drew one each. And in this second game, they looked really, really good, albeit against a Turkey side that have really underperformed in the tournament, I think. But Scotland need their big players to do that same thing. They need their big players to step up to the plate and deliver on the big occasion. And in many ways, the big occasion was against the Czechs for us in terms of an opportunity to go out and set a benchmark and win points. We win that game, we're probably through. Whereas now we've lost that game and we're basically now battling to avoid finishing pointless and goalless in the group. And that's not a good place to be. The flip side of the coin is we now have, it's the oldest cliche in the book, but we now have absolutely nothing to lose. Yeah. And I hope that's reflected in Steve Clarke's team selection.
Shall we go on to that then? So that's the team against the Czechs. So Marshall in goal, Hendry, Handley, Cooper, Robertson, O'Donnell wing-backs, Armstrong, McTominay, McGinn, Dykes and Christie. Well, you can answer this either way you want really, or both. What do you think Clarke's going to do and what would you do?
Right. So can I pick on that team first of all? Yeah. And I know this website's just sort of up there because of the ease with which it's displayed. But that wasn't the way Scotland lined up. They lined up in a sort of 3-4-2-1, I would say, where you had Ryan Christie and Stuart Armstrong playing behind Lyndon Dykes. So you'd two kind of sort of de facto number 10s kind of in there. That was the way I thought Scotland lined up in the game. People might argue with that, but that seemed to me, and the idea would be when one was up, sort of joining alongside the striker, the other would drop in, and then when obviously Scotland were defending, it became basically a sort of 5-3-2 for Scotland, or even a 5-4-1, depending on the way that the Czechs were attacking. What would I do for the England game? Now, Scotland are in a weird position because we actually do have options and we have depth.
I'll just bring the bench up, Stu. Just so
in the midfield positions, we have, I suppose that's helpful for the people watching. We have quite a lot of depth. We also have two very young, very talented players who are going to be Scotland internationals for years to come, but just haven't. I mean, they've both only played sort of fits and starts for the national team. And that's Nathan Patterson, who's a young right back who, when James Tavernier got injured at Rangers towards the end of the season, Patterson stepped in and was absolutely wonderful. Rangers fans had really enjoyed his cameos before that. And he's had a wonderful end to the campaign for Rangers. Now he's very, very raw. Very, very raw. But he's got more pace. He's a more natural attacking fullback than Stephen O'Donnell. Obviously, we know pace can make up for a multitude of failings in a footballer as well defensively. So if they get beat on the run, then they can run back and get the tackle in.
Campbell.
Well, yeah, that's the prime example. Nathan Patterson is a player that could do that, and I think so. Later on in the game against the Czechs, as you can see, number 25 James Forrest came on, and in his just over 10 minutes or so on the pitch, he did more as an attacking force than Stephen O'Donnell did in the whole game. The moment that sort of embodied Stephen O'Donnell's whole display was when he made an underlap and ran inside of Ryan Christie and actually blocked.
He ran into the ball, didn't he? Yeah.
And that was when Christie was sort of jinking into the box when it was 0-0. And that was just indicative of O'Donnell's lack of experience at that level. I think it was the run of a player trying to involve himself, but it lacked tactical awareness. And he's meant to be one of the more experienced players in the team. I would back Nathan Patterson to make a more intelligent decision in that particular situation than Stephen O'Donnell did. So one of the big selection headaches for Steve Clarke. Now, some people have said about the goalkeeper. I don't think there's any danger.
No, I'm not having that, no.
David Marshall will play in goal and rightly should. Right back, you could do one of three things. You could continue with Stephen O'Donnell, which I think he might do, because Steve Clarke and him work together at Kilmarnock. He's got a lot of trust in him, and he's come out with comments defending him this week because obviously O'Donnell's been pilloried by fans and certain sections of the media have criticised him as well. So you could go with Stephen O'Donnell. You could throw caution to the wind and bring young Nathan Patterson in, which is what I would do.
It's what Ali McCoy said he would do on the radio this morning.
Was it? I'm not surprised. I mean, Ali's a Rangers man, but at the same time, when it comes to Scotland, I'm sure he's making the decision with Scotland's interests at heart, and I still think it would be the right decision. Or you can play James Forrest, right, who would be good in a game like the Czech game where we're expected to kind of take the impetus to the opposition. I don't think that would be a good idea against England, because you're playing a guy who's a winger against
Raheem Sterling,
or, I mean, if he goes a different way, Jack Grealish, like that's the option there, which just shows the bounty of the players that England have at their disposal to try and affect the game. But that's why I would play Nathan Patterson. Nathan Patterson is a defender, but he's a defender that can attack. So that's what I would do there. The next big decision is the right centre-back. So there's a few different things Scotland can do here. Now, assuming Kieran Tierney is fit, which is what our chances in the game hinge on.
He's been training since Monday, apparently. Surely he's fit.
I hope so. Because if he doesn't make it, we don't win the game, and we probably don't get anything out of the game. It's that big. He's that big a player for us. He is pivotal to us defensively and attacking. I know talking about a left centre-back has been pivotal to your attacking plan seems weird, but bear with me and I'll try and explain that.
We know all about having your left centre-back missing and that being a big issue, because ours is too, yeah. Yeah,
but I mean, for all Harry Maguire plays with Man United, Kieran Tierney's a better player than him, and he is a better, maybe not a better centre-back, but he's a better player stepping out from the back than Harry Maguire. And overall,
I think the issue is not comparing the two players; it's what their influence is on their team. In which case, I get you. No.
And then, like, Kieran Tierney's massive to Scotland moving forward and defensively. But anyway, right centre back is the next big decision Steve Clarke's got to make. In the qualification campaign for this tournament, Scott McTominay played a lot of the key games as the right centre back and did very well. Although in the playoff against Serbia in stoppage time, or approaching stoppage time, when we conceded the equaliser, it was Scott McTominay falling asleep at a set piece that led to Serbia's equaliser. It was the one big mistake he's made in that position. But I think, given the lack of influence he had in the middle of the park against the Czechs, I would maybe play him there. Now, there are a range of options that Scotland have got. So you can see the way that it was set up there. Liam Cooper was deputising for Kieran Tierney, and I don't think Liam Cooper would be in the first 11. And that's saying something, because obviously he's had a very good season at Leeds.
Yeah, good player.
A lot of people rate him in the Premier League. Grant Hanley is seen as the stopper in the centre of defence.
He was the spare man, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he's the stopper in the centre of defence, but a lot of Scottish people have a misconception about him. Since Daniel Farke came in at Norwich, Grant Hanley's ability to step out and use the ball as a distributor has got much better. So Grant Hanley, I think, as the right centre-back, and then Cooper shunting along. Can he play the role as a stopper is my question.
Yeah, I've seen loads of Leeds, and the issue is it's Harry Kane and how much England get the ball to him. But, Harry Kane's Harry Kane. You can stick Franco Baresi up against him and he'll still give him a hard game. So
yeah, that's it. Now, I think the Liam Cooper option is a definite one. And it's what Gordon Strachan, former Scotland boss, thinks we should do because of that experience of him played against Harry Kane. So if Kieran Tierney does play, you could shunt Liam Cooper over, and then you could shunt Grant Hanley over. So Tierney left centre-back, Cooper centre-back, and Hanley right centre-back. The other option is you can drop Liam Cooper back out the team, keep Grant Hanley in as the stopper, and have Scott McTominay move back to right centre-back. That's the other option. I would be happy with either of those if Scotland did that. And
is there not an argument, Stu?
Mm-hmm.
Is there an argument? Keep McTominay in midfield, and I know this is sometimes a bit reductive. You have more good players on the pitch. Do you know what I mean in that respect?
It's not actually. So Rob Page, who is doing a great job so far with Wales in this tournament, he said that the reason that he chose his formation was around getting the best 11 players on the pitch. Now, the problem for Scotland is, I don't think many people, Steve Clarke probably included, could tell you definitely what the best 11 players are for Scotland.
Sure.
We don't have that. We have a lot of players that give us loads of different options. And unfortunately, a lot of them play a lot of the same positions. So that's a big problem for Scotland. I think McTominay will stay in the middle of the park.
I do. Yeah,
because the only option really in terms of a proper deep sitting player, and he's a different style of player in that position, but would be young Billy Gilmore, who has had some fantastic games for Chelsea and is a generational talent in Scotland. There's no doubt about it. He's a fantastic footballer. and he's for the same neck of the woods as me, so obviously we really like him. Episode 2 of my Tartan Daily podcast is all about him, speaking to a coach that's sort of worked with him when he was a young kid.
Surely though, Stu, Hampden Park against the Czechs, play Billy Gilmore. Wembley away against it. You're going to chuck him in there?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, my argument would be, yeah, I get the logic of what you're saying, but at the same time, Billy Gilmore's played more against Premier League players than the Scotland team. So,
fair comment.
I think that's the kind of question there. Now, it's very much thrown him into the lion's den, as it would be with Nathan Patterson, but my sort of barometer for that is always remembering the way that John Kennedy and David Marshall played when Celtic managed a 0-0 draw away at the Nou Camp when they were both teenagers, or John Kennedy might have been just turned 20, but they were both amazing in that game, and age was not a factor to consider.
Often as well, Stu, it's who's next to them on the pitch as well. If they, do you know what I mean? If it's in a midfield 3, maybe someone can hold his hand through the game as well. So and I think Billy Gilmore's got the strength of character that he could do it, and I think part of Steve Clarke's thinking will be, let's not destroy these kids at a young age. Nathan Patterson at Rangers has had less experience of kind of big game situations. I think most of the games, every game for Chelsea is a big game. So any game that Billy Gilmore's played and started in has been a big game. So I wouldn't have any qualms about throwing him in that situation. But the way that Scotland construct the centre of midfield is the next big thing, because Andy Robertson's going to play left back. As you said, against the Czechs, he did lift it. I think there was I think it was his best game in a Scotland jersey. And what I was going to add to, sorry to interrupt, do you remember Rafael Marquez, who used to play for Barcelona as Mexican?
Brilliant player.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant player, but in Barcelona, he's about the 7th best player in the team or whatever. Goes to play for Mexico. He's the man, right? He's stepping out of defence, and do you know what I mean? He played in a different way. And Robertson's not bringing it out of defence, but I just anyway, I'm labouring my point. I just wanted to mention Rafael Marquez, who I thought was a great player.
I love Rafael Marquez. Andy Robertson, I thought, had his best game in a Scotland jersey. I thought he stepped up to the fact that Kieran Tierney was missing, because normally on that left flank, a really interesting tactical wrinkle of the Scotland team is you've got the left centre back bombing up outside the actual left back, and he's actually maybe even arguably better when it comes to delivering a ball in and dribbling and stuff. So I think that is a really interesting facet of what Scotland can do tactically in terms of hurting the opposition. And I think the way that Andy Robertson stepped up, he almost redoubled his efforts as an attacking force in that Czech game. And he just looked every inch of Scotland captain, just telling the team.
I enjoyed it, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed his display as well. And I thought he was the one, maybe him and Grant Hanley were the two players that I would point at in that game. Stuart Armstrong maybe a wee bit as well, because I thought he made some good runs and linked up quite well at times. I think they were the 3 players that came out with pass marks for me from that Scotland starting 11. Again,
what are you doing up top then?
So we'll talk about the centre of midfield first, mate, because I think that's where Scotland are blessed with a litany of options. And you might want to scroll down here so you can see he started with Ryan Christie playing just off the striker, Stuart Armstrong, John McGinn, Scott McTominay all in there as well. So Scotland have Callum McGregor, David Turnbull and Billy Gilmore can all come into that central area. And they're all different types of players. Billy Gilmore's a deep-lying playmaker. David Turnbull, a bit more box-to-box, but very, very good with the set pieces and the distribution. Callum McGregor's a proper metronomic midfielder, can do bits of everything and knit the play together, but has looked jaded for the last 5-6 months, maybe.
Who's McGregor's club team? Sorry,
so he plays for Celtic. He plays for Celtic, and he's probably quite likely to be the next Celtic captain. So I think that shows that in the central area, every one of those players that we've got in the 4 that were selected in the main team and that are on the bench there, every one of them is a good player, and I would have confidence sticking every one of them in. And there are arguments for and against every one of them. David Turnbull, I don't think will play because he's just not played enough for Scotland, although his set-piece prowess is something that we could benefit from. Billy Gilmore's, it would be throwing him into the lion's den, but I wouldn't be scared of doing that. I don't think Steve Clarke will do it, though. I think the most natural swap they'll make is to bring Callum McGregor back in. And I was quite glad that Callum McGregor didn't start because I think he's been out of form for his club team, and I think he's looked quite tired. But I think the big disappointment was McTominay, and it's not McTominay you would replace McGregor with in that central area. So there's a lot of questions as to how Steve Clarke constructs that midfield. I think Stuart Armstrong did enough to keep the jersey, but I also think he's the most likely one that Clarke will remove from the team.
He's not John McGinn or a Man United player, is he?
That's it. That is exactly it, mate. So what he could do is he could bring McGregor in and move Armstrong forward to play in the sort of Ryan Christie role, playing off Lyndon Dykes, and this is the big one. Is do you play Lyndon Dykes and Shea Adams? Do you play one or the other? And I think most people are leaning towards Shea Adams. Now, I was a total Lyndon Dykes fanboy for a while. And I thought against Serbia, he gave one of the best displays I've ever seen from a Scotland striker. It was unbelievable. But against Luxembourg, he was very profligate in that friendly. And I joked, that's good, he's got all these misses out the way before we play the Czech. But the one good chance that we had...
The left footer for Dykes, yeah.
Yeah, it's too near the goalkeeper. Now, he does everything else right. He gets on the shoulder well and he takes it first time, which is what you should do. But it's at the keeper. You've got to be getting that in the corner with power if you're a top-class international striker.
We've had this, Stu. We've had this all season with Dykes, and he actually improved when Charlie Austin arrived. Go figure at QPR, but it wasn't a good
long barren spell.
It wasn't a good, and he scored a few penalties which bumped the goals up. But you can imagine, I've got a lot of QPR fans watch my channel, and
I commentate, as you know, I commentate.
Yeah.
Championship stuff for Sky Sports and for iFollow. So,
but I've seen
a lot of them.
It has gone like that a little bit for him, but it's not been the greatest first season. And we now know that a couple of million quid's a lot of money in the Championship. And of course, Che Adams left the Championship for 13 million quid or something.
Yeah. We did a really fun episode on the Tartan Daily. It was a guy that covered Shea Adams at Ilkeston Town for episode 2.
Right.
And it was just really cool to hear his sort of musings on how she was basically a man, like in a kid's, well, not really in a kid's body, the man's body even then, but when he was 16, 17 playing for Ilkeston Town. And just the kind of grounding that gives you, playing in the non-league against big burly defenders, you know, and sticking out at that stage. But also, one of the key things that Mark Duffy said to me, who came on the pod, was that he was unselfish and always tried to involve other people in the game. He wasn't interested in stats like assists and goals and stuff. It was more just about what would benefit the team. And then my mate Will, who is really good sort of sports journalist and works in cricket actually, but knows the game of football well. He's a Southampton fan, and he said Shea Adams is always better with chances when it's instinctual and it's not like run through half 10 seconds to think about it.
I know exactly what you're going to say because I watched it over and again for Birmingham. He scored 20 goals. He's got a signature move as well. It's an early shot from 15 to 20 yards low with the left foot.
Yes, there's that. And the other thing that he does is he keeps trying, like, rather than heading the ball, he'll try weird mid-air. It's almost like, did you ever play the game Mortal Kombat?
Finish him.
It's like Liu Kang with the leg. Like that's the kind of approach he takes with it. And yeah, he's got idiosyncratic stylistic things. Is he the most talented forward Scotland have got? I think, given that Lee Griffiths is sort of unfit and head is not in the right place, definitely. So yeah, I think. The question is, what would I do? I would keep Stuart Armstrong in the team. I would keep Scott McTominay in the team. I would keep John McGinn in the team. And I would fling Billy Gilmore in. I would fling both of the kids in, and I would put Shea Adams up top instead of Dykes, because I think Dykes is a good option to bring on with 20 minutes to go if you're chasing a goal.
I think one key thing, sorry, Stu, about Adams is he liked having Jutkiewicz next to him, and I think having Ings next to him at Southampton, two different type players, but he's not done it as a on his own central striker. He needs some help, doesn't he?
That's the concern. So, the other thing you could do is not play Billy Gilmore, play McGinn, play McTominay, and as I say, I would stick with Armstrong, and then play Adams and Dykes together, because that got a half's worth of play against the Czechs, I suppose for the most part, most of a half's worth of play against Luxembourg. They look to have a really, really good understanding. I think the fact that Dykes is a natural leader of the line and that Adams is a natural dropper into pockets or move into the channel, I think it works really well. They dovetail beautifully. So, yeah, I think a 5-3-2 or 3-5-2, whatever way you want to see it, would be a decent formation for Scotland to adopt. But I don't see him doing that. I think he might go with Shea Adams up top on his own. I think he'll bring Callum McGregor into the midfield, and I think he'll stick with O'Donnell, and I think he'll go, depending on Tierney's fitness, Cooper, Hanley, Hendry again, or he might move McTominay back if he's forced to, but I don't know. But if Tierney's fit, I think it'll be Tierney, Cooper, and Hanley moving to right centre back.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. He certainly seems to have a lot more tweaks, possibly, than Southgate's going to make for England. Let me just bring up the England side. And
that's the weird thing. Like, it's weird to be...
All the conversation prior to the game, Stu, was 3 at the back. Is this the hardest group game? Will he stick the extra defender in, given that he doesn't have Maguire? Will he trust Mings and Stones to be a pair? And I think everyone's sort of perception of this now is, given that they've won what was considered the highest ranking team, and obviously stylistically there will always be different things, with the back four, that we think there's not going to be many changes in that at all. Obviously, Philip's got rave reviews. He loves Mount. Kane's not getting dropped. He could mess around with Foden and Sterling, but why would he? And then it's just Chilwell, Shaw, Trippier in that position down the side. And
it's hard on Jack Grealish all the time, though. Like, I look at this England team the whole time and I just think it's such I don't understand how Jack Grealish isn't playing. Raheem Sterling, for all his experience and talent, has been in poor form for Man City. And the one thing I would say for the most part in Southgate's tenure is he's picked players in form rather than reputation, which is refreshing for an England manager. And I think on this occasion, and don't get me wrong, Raheem Sterling played well in the first game, but I still think Jack Grealish should feel really unfortunate about being out. But it's also worrying as a Scotland fan that with 20 minutes to go, we're flinging Lyndon Dykes on. With 20 minutes to go, England need a goal. They're bringing Jack Grealish and any other number of world-class players on. So it's going to be hard for us because the weakest part of the team is the defence. And even if we've got a lead, I don't trust us to hold it for very long. So it's going to be hard. And we don't have the physicality that people might have associated with Scotland teams of yesteryear. There's not that many big, burly players. It's mainly small technicians for the most part, which is kind of counterintuitive in a way.
I can see as a Scotsman why you would see Grealish and think, why is he not there? I would say 2 things back. One is it's international football and good players miss out. They just do. They can't get them all in. And the thing everyone's mentioning, Stu, is just the lack of pace if you play Foden and Grealish. And I know he didn't do it in the first game. We've all got this idea that Harry Kane is the hybrid Shearer Sheringham and can do both jobs, but he didn't. Will talked about Son Heung-min, who is we understand he's better than Raheem Sterling and had a better season, but the ability to run past, and the reason Grealish is not, and I did say this for the longest time, and let's be honest, Stu, we see a lot of people and they're putting up teams with Mount and Phillips as the double pivot, and then they got them all in there. They got Grealish and Foden and whoever, Rashford and Kane, and
there's got to be balance, hasn't it?
Exactly, there's no balance. So I think I think you're far more likely, unless England are chasing the game, to see one of Rashford and Sterling with one of Grealish and Foden. As much as they're good players. It's
no. I get
the balance, isn't it?
I do get that, and I also get that it's to do with the balance in terms of either flank as well. You've got Raheem Sterling cutting in off the left, which creates space for the overlap, whether it be Trippier or Mason Mount running outside. Likewise, on the other side, Phil Foden does the same, and then Kyle Walker or Calvin Phillips can get up and join in, And I think that's the key thing. Like, in terms of balance, whether it's right or left, whether it's attacking mindset or defensive mindset, that England team's beautifully structured. And that's
what about the left back, Stu? Do you sacrifice the Trippier set plays for a player who can open out the game at left back rather than having to play primarily with his right foot on the left-hand side?
Well, I think the thing about Kieran Trippier is he's an experienced player. He's played a lot of games in La Liga for Diego Simeone's fantastic side. Now, if you look at the hallmarks of Diego Simeone as a coach, his sides are really, really brittle and hard to break down. So that's why I think he's a good selection, coupled with the set piece sort of thing. I get where people were saying, why have we not got a natural left footer on that side, whatever. And I understand that, and I get that could be. I mean, if it was a case of Kieran Trippier was constantly coming inside and doing all his work, sort of coming infield, then yeah, that's a legitimate criticism. But he's a good enough player to go outside and whip a ball in on the left if he needs to as well. So I totally understand that selection. I didn't understand the uproar about it. And
this is what I mean about the groupthink negativity that you'll get. And Southgate said it himself, Stu, in the press conference. Whatever team I select, people won't like it.
Wrong,
yeah.
I think he's a brilliant manager, mate, and I think he's the best manager England have had in my lifetime. That
I can remember Sir Bobby, but certainly. Since then,
I mean that's right at the beginning of my life, like the beginning. So I think obviously you're not going to criticise Bobby Robson, and
it's different. It's a different time as well, because that was all about personality, and he had. I mean, this is the ridiculous thing. He had Lineker, Beardsley, and a midfield of Waddle, Robson, Gascoigne, and Barnes.
That's obscene. Right? Now, I look at that sort of era, though, and this is the difference, and this is why I'm worried, right? I think this England team is more about the sum of the parts than the very, very good individuals that they've got. So that's what makes me think. Also, the other aspect of Gareth Southgate's management that's fantastic, in my opinion, is I describe him as the English Jurgen Löw, because he looks at it from a holistic standpoint, because he's had experience in charge of the teams under 21s and stuff. So he looks at it on a more holistic base. He's thinking about the future of the nation. He's not thinking about, let's have an England team that goes out and wins today, but there's no sort of conveyor belt coming behind and the pathways blocked. He's thinking about the whole thing. And that is why I think he's a fantastic England boss. That coupled with the fact that I think he's very, very good tactically. I mean, he's not the most motivational character to look at on the sidelines, but you look at the way that he celebrated that Croatia goal, and you can see that there's proper passion there. And I think the other thing is he's a player that's stared down the barrel of the very worst that it can get as an England player, like being the scapegoat at a tournament that you hosted, given that he missed one penalty kick, And I think handled that at the time with as much dignity as you probably could. All right, he put a bag in his head in a Pizza Hut advert, but I think for the most part he handled it really well. People forget the job he did at Middlesbrough. Like, it seems to be one of those things that people just conveniently forget to remember. And I think he's a fantastic manager. I think he's very, very good at building his team, and I'm really worried. I'm worried about England. For me, they are the third favourite based on what I've seen so far.
But yeah, you said a lot of smart stuff there. My take on, I think people, because it always used to be that the best, we talk about Sir Bobby, the best club manager would then go and do the international job. And I agree with what you said, actually, that they're just completely different. I liken it to a good musician thinking they can write a song. Do you know what I mean? They're two entirely different skills and international management. And you mentioned Joachim Löw. Literally been on the bench for every Germany game, even before he was the manager, for like 20 years. And because it's such a bespoke skill, international football. And one thing I'm glad about, and this might sound silly, but I think Gary Neville, and he's been pushing this narrative as well, I think people listen to Gary Neville, even dyed in the wool, Southgate out, play 20 attackers. I think they listen to him. And a lot of the stuff you said, I've heard Gary Neville pushing a simple look as an international manager.
I'm not plagiarised, by the way.
No. You didn't. There was no kind of sense of that. Actually, I'm interested that you picked up on it, and I'm hoping that people are coming around to the fact that it's not just like, so if Southgate goes, oh right, Klopp, Guardiola, who's at Tuchel, who's at the top of the Premier League, Bielsa or whatever. Get them in as the England manager. That's not how it works anymore. And actually having someone who's
get Harry and he'll inspire them.
He'll do a job. Yeah, exactly. But it used to be like that, and it used to be who can get Gazza onto the pitch and playing, and getting the balls in for Shearer or Lineker or whoever it was, and
change days though, isn't it? And
it really is.
I think that's the thing. And like you ask me right now, anyone in world football, do I think they could do a better job as England manager than Gareth Southgate? I wouldn't guarantee that any other manager could. I wouldn't say they definitely could do better. Now, I'm talking Guardiola, Klopp, all of these master tacticians, because the question is, can they translate that onto the international scene when they've got less time
where you have the players for 2 weeks a year, as opposed to
you always talk of. That's the parlance that's used, right? So there's that from a tactical perspective. And then secondly, the idea that if something's wrong with Man City's team or Liverpool's team, then they tell Bernie Stein or Michael Edwards to go and sign them a player. You can't do that as an international boss. But the other big thing, and I have mentioned it, is that holistic view. I think Gareth Southgate, I mean, I'm pretty sure he'll get parachuted into some director of performance or something role after it if he wants. And I think that would be the best thing for the English FA to do. If they decide his time as head coach is up, then what they need to do is they need to bring in someone. They should probably let him pick who should do it, or they should at least allow him some say in the process. And yeah, I mean, Gareth Southgate is the reason I'm worried about England winning this tournament. But genuinely, it's not anything to do with any individual player or anything like that. And I think there are loads of them that are gifted and loads of them that have the kind of potentially have the Wayne Rooney 2004 factor where they can just jump in and nobody really knows about them. Although that's less of a factor in today's game when players are scouted from their 14 and whatever. But I think there's loads of things that point to... I mean, another thing was the fact that England didn't pull up any trees with that first win. It was a total business-like result, and I've seen all sorts of commentary. I've seen people say that people were going overboard with praise, of people saying that they were under.
It'll be complete. There'll be nothing down the middle for England. It'll either be it's coming home or this is the worst. This is the worst thing ever. No, I just wanted to add one thing. You summed it up really well. It feels like with international football, and I heard Jose Mourinho talking about this. You either stick your Bielsa in at Chile or a Löw in at Germany for Das Reboot or Southgate at England for ages. Or you do what?
I can turn the phrase, mate. I'm stealing that one. That is plagiarised. Das Reboot. I like it.
Oh, it's a book by Rafa Honigstein, by the way. So he can take the credit for that. But Das Reboot won the World Cup in 2010, though, didn't it? So we shouldn't mock. What was I going to say? It's either that or transition from club. The idea that essentially the great Spanish team was the great Barca team. Essentially the great West Germany team was the Bayern Munich team. The great Dutch team that didn't win anything was the Ajax team. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's taking stuff that Pep Guardiola has done with Phil Foden and Kyle Walker and saying, right, can I just stick that right into my team there? So I think it's the combination, isn't it? You have to kind of steal stuff from club and just let them get on and do it, or build your own thing, or hopefully a little combination of both.
It's the balance between giving players tactical instruction and giving them a sense of freedom, to go and play their own game their own way. Now, I think one of the reasons that Scotland were so good under Gordon Strachan and the Celtic players were doing so amazingly for Scotland at that time was Brendan Rodgers' success at Celtic. So you had Ryan Christie, Callum McGregor and James Forrest were all absolutely on fire for Scotland at that time. And that was as a result of Brendan Rodgers just lifting the levels at Celtic, be it tactically, athleticism, all the different aspects that he was bringing at club level benefited the national team as a byproduct. Now, I think that's easier with a team of the standard of Scotland where not every player's involved in proper elite level training and stuff on a daily basis all the time. But I think with England as well, there's got to be a balance of allowing players to do their club work and they're sort of playing the way they do for the international scene. But as well as balancing that with the other side of it is players who are hungry, you know? Like, look at how Calvin Phillips played. That was the hunger born of being a Leeds player, eager to prove himself on that stage. Prove
Championship player.
That he belongs, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And by the way, you're right to point that out. Calvin Phillips is not the Calvin Phillips he is if Leeds have been in the Premier League for 4 years. Calvin Phillips is the kind of player that he is by virtue of having played with the Rough Knocks.
He's there on the climb, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's lovely to see. Like, he's a player I'm really happy for. And actually, the whole England team, with the exception of Jordan Pickford, whose face annoys me a wee bit.
That is shocking. Absolutely shocking. Now you've used the word entitled, so I don't want to trigger you here, but, and I'll try and say this in as balanced way as I can, given the respective strength of the two squads, the respective populations of the two countries that we have.
Oh, I don't want to address it too much.
20 times more players to pick from. Given the respective strengths of the two leagues, you would have England as hot favourites to win this one, yeah?
Of course, mate. Like, if we get a draw, it's a really good result. I mean, you're at home for one, for all that it's not really at home. It is. So that's a factor. The standard of the squad and the players is a factor. The experience of big games is a factor. The fact that you're not really under any great pressure, although people will say England are expected to get the result. If England lose, all they need to do is go and beat the Czech Republic and they're still through comfortably. They can probably get a draw in that game and get through, you know. So I think all of those things all in, a draw is a good result for Scotland. I'll be disappointed with a draw especially if we're winning late on, especially if something akin to 2-2 at Hampden Park a few years ago happens, where we concede with, and definitely get Stuart Armstrong off before he gives the ball away in the last minute. I would say. But yeah, I think a draw would be a good result for Scotland. Of course it would. And it would be a poor result for England, to be honest. I think England want to be... If I'm looking at this from an England perspective, which is very hard, but if I'm looking at it from an England perspective, I'm thinking, right, we were businesslike against the best team in the group. We showed that we can deliver against that team and boss the game without being overly exuberant about it. Against Scotland, you're playing against a team that you're better than, so, and a team that will be right up for the game. So if I were England, I would be looking to really impose and say, look, we're at this tournament. We're here to compete for this trophy. And this is your chance to really lay down a marker and properly do that. For Scotland, it's in some senses a free hit, because if we lose narrowly and we put up a good fight, I think most people would accept that to some degree. But the one thing Scotland can't do, in most games, right, I would always be of the opinion you might as well lose like 3-0 as 2-1. This is a game I would much rather lose 2-1. I don't want us to get comfortably beaten. And I think it would undo a lot of momentum and good work that Steve Clarke has done as Scotland manager if we were to get somewhat of a trouncing. And like 3 goals or more is a bad defeat for Scotland. Losing by a couple would be disappointing. Losing by 1 narrowly, we've probably put up a good fight. And I think a lot of it will come down to the nature of the Scotland performance as well. So is it we go out and we stand toe-to-toe and we have a right good go? So similarly, just as an analogy, I think Celtic's one of Celtic's best performances is when they stood toe-to-toe with Man City. Now, I'm including all the Martin O'Neill performances, beating Barcelona, all of that stuff. I think the best Celtic performance in Europe to date in the Champions League was when they drew 3 each with Man City, and they played at that level against that team, a Pep Guardiola team that at that point was unbeaten in the league, and they went toe-to-toe with them, and although it was a draw and not a win, they looked like they belonged at that level, and they played in a style befitting of that level. If Scotland can do something akin to that, not necessarily at the same level, obviously, but if they can do something similar where they stand toe-to-toe with England and they trade blows, and whether they win or they come off sort of a wee bit sort of worse, I think if Scotland go out and have a go, our country will be proud. And
that's almost exactly what I would say if we were playing France. Do you know what I mean? It's like, just belong.
Levels,
yeah, levels. Brilliant stuff, Stu. Look, we said we were going to do 20 minutes. We're up 57 or something now. Right. Get the plugs in. People obviously know about Behind Enemy Lines. Next episode's going to be over on your channel after the group games, isn't it? Yeah. But tell us about HodgeyTheHack and Twitter and Tartan Daily.
Yes, so you can follow me at HodgeyTheHack. That's HODGEY, the hack, the HACK. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course YouTube, where I would love you to hit the wee bell and subscribe to my channel. I've got 2 main podcasts that I do. I'm doing the Tartan Daily right now. I also do Hodge on Nodge, which is my weekly thing where I look at all things Norwich City. And I've got a few kind of interesting ideas that I do with that. The most notable interview we've had so far is with former Norwich City boss Alex Neil, who spoke about his time at the club for the first time. And after the Euros, I will be launching more podcasts on my YouTube channel and on all of the podcast streams as well. If you search for HodgeyTheHack, Hodge on Nodge, or the Tartan Daily, then you will find all of my stuff there, if you prefer, because some people prefer to listen in audio format rather than watching. So I'm catering for all audiences in that regard. Brilliant stuff.
Good luck, mate. Enjoy the game on Friday. May the best team win.
No, may the worst team win.
That's a very good way to finish. That is our look at England, Scotland. Go and give Stu a follow, and you're gonna, well, not on this channel, but you can see me on Stuart's channel for episode 3 of Behind Enemy Lines, and then he'll be back over on my channle for episode 4.
Pre-England preview as well, mate. On the
I'll be on Tartan Daily. Yes. That's where are we? Bragging the 4th. That'll be tomorrow. Yes,
tomorrow.
Yeah. You find me on there. There you go. Anyway, that means I've got to get this up today now, as I was going to have a bath. But right, England versus Scotland. There is our preview. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Enjoy the game, and don't clip out anything we've said that turns out to be massively wrong after the fact. That's not fair. Say goodbye, Stu.
See you later, mate. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Anyone that's new to my stuff, it's nice to meet you. Get in touch.
Over and out. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button, and to be notified every time we upload, ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.